Welcome to episode 3 of the Another Bright Spark podcast by Ignys. Today we're in Croydon at the offices of EMAP, interviewing Karen Hayes, the editor of Electronics Weekly. Thanks for joining us today. I had to write these down because there was quite a lot of them. Okay, so we have What's New in Electronics, Electronic Product Review, EPD, Electronic Product and Test, and Electronics Weekly. Is there an electronics publication that you've not worked at?
Did you have electronic product new EPN Europe in there?
I've got electronic product test. You know, I've missed that one
No.
off. Oh, I've not done my research. What led you to the world of electronics? What was it? Were you fascinated by it? It was an industry that you fell into.
I did fall into it. I was on the graduate training program at Morgan Grampian, and someone had told me if you work on a magazine for a couple of years, then you can go into PR. So it was the gateway. And so I started, my first magazine was What's New in Building, and then I loved that, and I cut my teeth and learned how to sub and how to write features and how to write news, how to ask questions, all it was journalist training course. And then I thought, right, that's it, I know everything, and I'll go and do PR, and I hated it. So I came back to Morgan Grampian, and I tailed between my legs and said, I haven't got a job, can you find something for me, and can I go back to building? And they said, we haven't got a vacancy, but there is one at What's New in Electronics. And he's a lovely editor, go and see him, and just work there for a couple of months until something comes up in what you really want to do. So I thought that was a good idea. So I went to What's New in Electronics, which was a product magazine. So back in the 90s, I don't know if you'll remember them, but it was new products. You had a bingo number, and the readers would mark their number of something they were interested in, send it off, and the publisher would gather them all up and send them to companies like Ignys, and they would then go through all of their sales leads, and everyone loved product books. And it meant that I was writing about test equipment, I was writing about PCBs, I was writing about embedded boards, I was writing about components and passives and semiconductors and everything. So even though I didn't know about electronics, I knew a little bit about all of these things just by dint of everything was a new product. And so that was it. We launched What's New in Electronics Europe. But I think what I started telling you of how the different disciplines that I was writing about was that although I didn't know anything about, I didn't have an electronics education, at one press event that I went to, I realised that I actually knew more than someone who'd graduated 5 years ago, because they'd stopped learning and they'd only specialised in one area. Whereas I may not have been an expert in anything. I was jack of all trades, but I knew lots of people in all of those trades, and I knew who to ask to find out more. So, and I carried on from there, really.
What did you dislike about PR? What was the different stand? What was the main differences between journalism and PR for you?
It was, the Morgan Grampian training scheme was superb. So it taught you how to write everything properly and question everything. So PR writing was a very different kind. And so from what I'd first learned as the correct way to do things, the PR writing was going against everything I'd been taught, really. And you also had to serve two masters, because I'd be writing something thinking this has got to be accepted by the editor, but also it's got to be passed by the person who's paying for it, the company. And you can't write a press release like that because they have
different agendas.
So I just couldn't do it. I was like, this is just, I can't write that. It's awful.
No.
So it wasn't me. There are lots of people out there in PR land. They do a really good job, but I'm just not very good at it.
Suited to you. Of course, understand. You spoke about how you continue to learn, and there's obviously lots of different elements. In Electronics Weekly, it covers obviously there's design, there's components, there's suppliers. Have you got a favourite area? Have you got a specialist that you like to write about, or if a story comes up, you go, oh, that's going to be interesting.
I do tend to grab any that are broadcast, graphics chips, automotive. I like the development tools. I like. So they're probably the ones that I kind of snaffle away if I can.
It's been 64 years, I believe, this year that Electronics Weekly has been in circulation. As the editor, do you feel any weight of responsibility, I suppose, for such a sort of prestigious sort of legacy? And how do you sort of handle that and go about that?
There is quite a weight to it. It is a well-recognised brand.
And with the awards attached to it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And what's really nice is when I go even to the US, there will be and I have a paper copy with me. The engineer will go, oh, I remember this. And even though I've come onto the stand and said, I'm Caroline Hayes, Electronics Weekly, they go, yeah. And then you bring out the printed title, and they're like, oh, I remember this when I was a young engineer. And that's really nice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weight to it. We've got a great editorial team. Some have been with us writing on the magazine for decades.
Wow.
And people do like it. They respect it. It's got a character of there are certain things that go into EW, and people like that. And so we've got to maintain that. But also, a lot's happened in 64 years. We've also got to keep making sure that we serve relevant, contemporary engineers, but also look to the future for the future engineers. So we can't rest on our laurels, but we have got a very good background, which is lovely.
So the Elektra Awards are very, I think, unique in a way in that they are peer-reviewed. I know our CEO, Richard, is one of this year's judges. Why do you think that's important? I mean, the obvious reasons, that it's, you can pay for a table, you can turn up and you can win an award, that's very common. But the fact this industry, what makes them sort of stand out, and why is that so important that it gets the peer review?
Well, first of all, we're delighted that Richard's on board. So it's another discipline, another voice, and another experience to bring onto the judging panel. So that's wonderful. And that is part of what the Electras is about. I think you're right. It's peer reviewed. It's by people who know things, so they know that it's not just a new chip. They'll be able to say that's been done so many times before. It's new for that company, but it's not new. Or they might be able, as an engineer, to say this is really going to make a difference. If I was working on this and this came on my desk, it would really move things forward. So you have to have a certain knowledge and acumen and be a certain personality to be able to do that. And rather than a people's choice, they're easy to get your auntie to phone up and vote as well. So it is quite a rigorous process, but it is really quite thorough. So that it's nice to hear you say that, and we like to think so. If you win an Elektra, you've really earned an Elektra. You have been through the motions, through the mill half the time, and it's by people who know what they're talking about and people who are going to appreciate what those design, development, that time and money that's gone into that product. So I think that's part of it. And it's been going for 22 years.
How long?
So it's a big event. It's a bit of an industry party. It's glamorous. You can easily if you're up for a nomination, you can maybe take a few people from the office, and it's not Nando's, is it? You're going out for a nice do, and I think it's got a nice feel about it.
How do you keep them fresh? What are the challenges?
Well, there's a good point. Again, in 22 years, a lot has changed. Things have come into the market. Things have gone out of the market. So there are categories like the Internet of Things. Who heard of that 10 years ago? There are. We've introduced some new categories for this year. The Workplace Award. Again, people are doing lots of sustainable or corporate responsibility, and that needs to be reflected in our industry, as well as maybe some environmental issues. We've also got a smart cities, again, because who heard of those 10 years ago? And some startups. So that's how by always reporting on the industry and analysing the industry, we can keep up what's going on. It's a true reflection of what's happening in our industry and how people are working towards making that better.
If you were to offer any tips to make an entry stand out, what would you suggest? I mean, it's too late for this year, obviously. If a company's got its eyes set on their own Elektra, we have 3. What would you suggest?
Details,
Okay.
technical details. So run it past your marketing department first, and anything they put in, whip that out. I'm joking, but it's the best. It's groundbreaking. It's world revolutionary. It probably isn't. So take all that out, and as we said, the judges are experts, and they're looking for details. They're engineers, so they're really detail focused, orientated. So when you say it's fast, how fast? Put all these details in. Put in as much as you can about use cases, about tests, about testimonials. Just, they're a very well educated panel of judges. So the more information, solid information, engineering information you can give them, then that makes their life easier, but it also makes the selection process better.
You're not going to kidder, is what you're basically going to say.
Exactly.
Exactly. Excellent. I was chatting to Katie. She's one of our hardware engineers. She's the only female hardware engineer that we've got. Just want to take her point of view, because I think it is a really, really interesting topic. She told me about 20% of her course in the masters were female. Out of those 7, it was like a fairly small course. Out of those 7, 2 went on to engineering careers. 5, the other 5 went to have a career in finance, completely changed tack. Katie's never worked with another female engineer. The female workforce is just under 50%, I believe, but in engineering it's like 16, 17. It's still really quite low. Things like the awards help. Do you think the industry could do more, and if so, what could that look like?
But people are trying. You've highlighted one of the issues really. People who go, men and women who go into STEM careers, often get lured away to finance and computers and well-paid things. So it's not just encouraging them, it's retaining them. And I think that goes for men and women in the career. There are things that can be done. Having a woman maybe interviewing you for your first job as a hardware engineer helps, some kind of empathy. It has got better. We did a series to celebrate our 60th anniversary, talking to women who started in the very early 80s, and they had some
horror stories,
terrible obstacles that they had to overcome. Of
Sure.
I do more than make the tea. Can I please contribute an idea? So there has been some ground made, but there's still a little bit. And I've still been at press conferences where I'm the only woman in the room. I've still been at some exhibitions where I haven't seen many other women. So, and it's not just having a presence, it's being accepted. At exhibitions, I will be talking to an engineer. We're doing an interview as part of our jobs, and we will be interrupted because we must be talking about makeup, and they will ask us, where are the pamphlets? It's like, I don't know, I don't work here for a start.
Yeah.
And the woman who does is not a booth babe.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of assumptions that people, and so this is why the Women Leaders in Electronics Awards is so important, because it's saying that there are people there. They're not just making the tea, they're doing really good work, they're leading other engineering teams, and they are making innovations, and they are pushing forward technology in their own right as good engineers. So it's all about that. It's a long, slow process, but we're getting there.
Katie touched on something I thought was quite interesting. She said when she has gone for jobs as a female engineer, that sometimes she gets a little bit of imposter syndrome, in the sense that, am I here because they need to fill a quota? Have you had any experience of that yourself, or any example?
I haven't knowingly, no.
Okay.
But I'm sure there is a lot of that. I have had what they call the Matilda complex, whereas I've suggested something, written down something, proposed something, and it's been overlooked. A man suggests it. Great idea, let's run with that.
I mean, you shouldn't laugh, but
No.
it's ridiculous,
yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
So, yeah, my family, husband and 2 children, the grown boys, men, I get shouted down a lot just by dint of they have deeper voices than I do. But then I also wield the mother card and I smack them across the knees. So part of it is it's not men's fault. They do have deeper voices. They can be heard. They can be more authoritative just by that's what boys are made to do. But there are some women who can cut across that, and they maybe should be allowed to do that. And you're not stepping aside because it's not one person's given role or not. But I think that's probably a problem with some women, that they have to say something a couple of times before it's...
Yeah. Equality doesn't mean you're getting less. It just means everyone gets an equal say. That's how I see it.
Exactly, yeah.
We're always trying to get a good range of voices and opinions. It's something we quite pride ourselves. Well, a lot of our customers, it's going to sound like an Ignys sales pitch now, it's not an Ignys sales pitch. We get a lot of comments. So our engineers come from a wide range of different backgrounds, neurodiverse, ethnically diverse. We've only got one female engineer, unfortunately, but what happens is all our work's peer reviewed, very much like the awards. And the engineers, we do have hybrid working, but they like coming in, they like some time at home, but they're all in the same room. And they're all aware of what each of them's working on with daily stand-up. And if you've got all these different brains that think differently and you've got a problem, you've got 16 different ways to solve that problem. So, we have customers who come in and they may think they want a certain thing from the product, but actually with this diversity, they get, a bunch of different solutions they hadn't thought of, and we can work out what's the best way for them. And
absolutely, that's exactly what it is. That to solve a problem, again, some of these interviews I've had with women, one of the questions is, what does a woman bring to any team that perhaps a man doesn't? And it's usually sort of a sense of collaboration or sharing of ideas or just communication ideas. Sometimes some women generally are better at communicating ideas. And you need all of those in a project. And things like, the seatbelts in cars, women generally are smaller, but they were designed by men. So it's great if you're a 5'9" man, but if 5'3", you get garroted. So you need a woman to say, well, that's great. The mechanism works, but we need to have a system where we can lower it, and it's all these kind of things.
It's a different perspective. And that's needed.
All these people are going to be using it. So if everyone pools ideas, then you get the best result. So that's...
In your view, what makes a good startup? What are the sort of personality traits? If you're thinking of setting up a business, like an entrepreneur is the same sort of thing. What makes someone successful? What's the secret sauce?
Oh, if you all knew that, Neil. I don't think there's one characteristic or trait. It must be, you've got to be fairly confident in your idea. You probably have to draw on quite a lot of traits, in that you have to be able to present your idea to someone. You've got to find venture capital and seed funding, which is not easy. And most people will need some kind of guidance from that. You'll need some business acumen, some managerial acumen, and just plain common sense. Like, you can't buy all the new equipment and buy rent fancy offices until you've at least sold one product. So there's a lot of many ranges, but I suppose a lot of it are these traditional female traits of being collaborative. So maybe one person isn't a startup. It has to be, one person's the ideas guy, another person's the finance guy, and knows someone who knows someone, and it's networking.
A mixed group of personalities to make it work.
Just like we were saying about the engineering design teams. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I started my career 20-ish years ago in print catalog production and print buying. Because of marketing, I was the go-to print supplier. I kind of fell under my remit. Back then, like 20 years ago, it was the death knells were ringing. The end was sort of on the horizon. A lot was being moved to Europe, and now a lot has been moved to China. There are still sort of small print ups, print publication. What are your current challenges? Obviously, we're in a digital world now. There's no getting away from that. I know you do have a digital copy. What are the main challenges to you for a publication that you're currently facing?
It's interesting. There are some people that still like the print over a and above.
Oh, I'm sure the
digital,
tactileness of the paper copies.
Absolutely. Yeah. People will flick through it, and people will put it to one side, which you don't always do with the digital issue. People still, engineers especially, still ripping out pages to keep for later and file somewhere. You
They'll never go back to.
And you can do that with the digital edition as well, of course, but there's different mentalities. So we keep both to serve everyone. The print magazine is only circulated in the UK, although you can pay a subscription if you want it in the US, but mostly it's the digital magazine. You've got, if you click on something, you can see how long someone's watched it with the digital magazine, which you can't with print, which is a problem.
So you collect a lot of data on how pages are performing and what people are interested in.
Exactly. Whereas you can, when I started my career, as I was telling you about, with the product, and you had the bingo numbers, then you could tell what was a popular story, because if more people would circle that bingo number. We haven't got that now with print, but there is still, people still want to be in the print, so we're juggling both. I think, like you say, even 20 years on, people are still trying to find their way, and it was interesting, as you say, when the first death knolls were being sounded, there were still new magazines on the market. Some of them, how to write internet speak, all internet related. It was still spurning new. Yeah. So there's still a place for it, but like we were talking about with our equality, you're just shuffling around. I think the analogy I liked was when there was radio and then television came in. Radio didn't die, but people just, if they wrote a play, they wrote in a slightly different format for the radio medium to the television medium. And so you just maybe adapt, morph a little, and just have those separate channels going. Obviously with Electronics Weekly, you've got the digital and the print magazine, but then also the website, which is constantly updated. And that has another role again of being a portal to other news and linking through to things. And you can, if something happens, you can very, very quickly update it and see it and put it out there. And then you've got social media, and we have to do all our social media channels to pump out the news that's just broken, that we've just put online, which will go in the print issue eventually. So you have all of these things, and you just work them as best you can for that particular medium or that reader.
One of the articles that you published this month was touching upon the huge job losses that we've had in the industry. The UK is like 9th globally in terms of job losses. Tech job losses, I think your quote makes up 43% of job losses across the board. It's been a tough year. We've felt it. Luckily we've not had to make job losses ourselves. Some other companies have. What have been the main causes, do you think, of the sort of downturn in the industry?
Oh, it's tricky, and as you say, it's right across the board. So you can't say it's one thing.
Because it's a chain, it affects other areas as well. But
of course, yeah. I think geopolitically there's been a lot going on, so people are very reluctant to invest, and without investment, follows. There have been, I think, from the supply chain, people are still adjusting to COVID and the inventory surpluses, and they're still working out, which has a knock-on effect. There have been scarily numbers in the US where people are letting go thousands of people. So I don't know quite. Well, there isn't a single thing. There is a global slowdown. There are global changes, and people are also shifting gear. Lots being put into accelerated computing and into AI, which, if there's only so much money in the pot, that will mean that some other things will have to go. So it's an evolving industry, so some things are going to have highs and lows, so that must play into it as well. So that's my summation of the...
No, I think you're right. I mean, there was a lot of hesitation around the snap election as well, wasn't there? So that was, I think, when you're looking for investment, especially like government investors, like, okay, where's the wind going to blow, and people sort of hang fire a little bit. A lot of companies as well, I don't know, it affected you in particular, but with COVID and home working, there was a lot of employment, I think, as well. You know, with like especially in the tech sector, it's like, oh, people can work from home. Things are going to get better, so they hired, and obviously it's not bounced back. You know, obviously Brexit's been a part of that. The economy suffered, and I think they've bolstered themselves, but then had to trim around the corners and things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's so multi-threaded.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it has been tough. Do you think? Are you optimistic though for the next 6-12 months? Do you think it's going to bounce back? You're the front line of the news of our industry, Caroline. Give our viewers hope. What do you think is going to happen?
I'm generally optimistic. I think there will be some casualties and some setbacks. It's bound to be, but people always want semiconductors. People will always want chips. People will always want phones and things that these go into. That is, you're not going to put that toothpaste back in the tube. You're always going to be. There'll always be an electronics industry, and there will always be a thirst for new, groundbreaking ways of doing it. How that's going to come about, and from which sectors, regionally, geographically, it's hard to say. But no, I'm confident.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for hosting us in lovely Croydon.
Yeah, sorry about the Croydon bit.
Okay, that's been really great. Thank you for your time.
It's
I
been
really
very
appreciate
enjoyable.
it.
Yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.